Hi everyone, my name is Deborah J. Kelly. I'm an intrepid explorer of the mind, the body and the soul. And if you'd like to learn a little bit more about me, my website is www.deborahjkelly.com. The link will be below. So today what I wanted to discuss was this shift that we're all feeling, which is happening at the moment. So as we all know, there's a lot going on in our beautiful planet at the minute. There's a lot of fear, there's these pandemics, there's a lot of change in people's lifestyles. And really what I wanted to put a little bit of light on is another perspective. That's all it is, just another perspective as to how things are shifting and changing. And my belief and understanding really is that there's no one perspective that's completely, totally, 100% accurate. And the reason I say that is because we're all living individual different lives. We all come from different backgrounds. We all have our different karmic histories. We all have had different past lives. We've all come into this world on different contracts. And really anybody's perspective, that anybody who says that their perspective is 100% exactly as it is on what's happening right here, right now, while it might be tempting to be completely in belief of them, and while the majority of what they say has validity, I do feel that it's important to gain our own perspective on what's happening. And so what I mean is watch as many videos as you can about what's going on. Listen to as many people talking, read as many books on to self-help and to lead you on your journey. Do all of this, but what you need to do all the time is to feed back into what's right for you. So it's to feel in your mind, your body and your soul, to bring them all together and feel, does that sit right with me? Is that information correct for me? And there's times where you might listen to somebody and you might agree with 90% of what they say, and there might be another 10% that you're not really totally sure on. It's totally fine for that not to be right for you at this time. I remember when I was a kid, I remember reading the Celestine Prophecy. I tried so hard to read that book. I just couldn't. No matter how many times I actually tried to read that book, I just couldn't read it. And the reason, in hindsight, looking back, is because it wasn't the right time for me. I kept the book. A couple of years later, I was like, I'm going to get this now. I'm going to read this book. So I read the book. I got maybe, another 20 or 40 pages past where I had the last time, even though I had to start from the beginning again. And it just wasn't sitting with me. And I remember thinking, why is this book so difficult to read? Because to me, in school, you're taught, everybody gets given a textbook, everybody reads the same book, and everybody comes out with different marks from different subjects, and you feel inadequate or insignificant when you don't meet the level of expectation from that subject or that textbook. And so we have this system of thinking that we're all exactly the same, that we're all exactly equal. And we are equal in that we all come from source, and therefore we are all the same person. We're just having different experiences in different bodies. And that's a whole other video that we can go into at a different stage. But essentially what I'm saying to you is your perspective is completely, totally and utterly unique to you. So your perspective in your life is completely and totally unique to you. You may meet somebody and you're like, wow, we're just so alike and we're just so similar, and discover that they say something someday that just doesn't resonate with you, and you're like, wow. And you might feel betrayed or disheartened that all of a sudden you're not the same as that person. That's completely, totally okay, because you are unique and you are completely different. Your parents are different to another person's parents. Your parents individually had their own unique experiences throughout their whole entire lifetimes, and they therefore had their own unique experiences. They then had parents of their own, your grandparents, and your grandparents came, all four of them or whatever, from different households and had different lifestyles also. And that's going back only as far as your grandparents. So your parents and your grandparents on both sides, wow, like that's a lot of influence, wisdom, knowledge, history, baggage that we take on. And we don't even know that we take it on. We don't even know that we're carrying their pain, and we don't know that, we're carrying their joy. Each person who comes into this world comes in with their own karmic contract, if you want to call it that. For years, I never really believed in the concept of karma. It's taken me quite a while, because the reason it didn't sit with me was because it felt very restrictive. It felt very aggressive. The idea of it felt very damning, and I didn't really allow it into my sphere because I didn't fully understand the extent of it, and I saw it as quite a negative thing. And in actual fact, in hindsight, now that I've become aware of a lot more other things, I'm like, oh, okay, karma makes sense now, because we have past lives, and there's things that we do in our past lives that affect and have a knock-on effect for our future lives. And really what we've been trying to do as a species is to rectify that karma. And that karma is not it's not punishment, it's not being put to stand out on a step because you've been bold, or it's not the divine source or universe or God. It's not their way of getting back at you for not being a good little boy or girl in your past life. It's actually for experience, and it's actually for ascension, for your higher purpose. So what you want to do is you want to move through each lifetime living as humbly and honestly as you can, whilst being a human. We are here having a human experience. Humans have emotions. Humans have light and dark. We're here to experience the full gamut of that, and to understand that every aspect of that is what is ultimately leading us back to where we came from, back to source, back to God, back to light, whatever way you want to put it. The more lessons we learn, the more things we can tick off in our life, and the closer we can go to, can be to going home. So if we can look at our karma to be more to do with lessons, learning those lessons and making amends with them, forgiving yourself for those particular lessons and moving on, then we get to go home. We get to go a little bit closer to home. And so these are concepts for me that have taken years to bed in. And the reason they've taken years to bed in is because at some point or another, it just wasn't the right time for me. As I said, I read the Celestial Prophecy when I was a kid. It took me years before I could pick that book back up and actually read it through. And I remember the first time I read it through, I was like, okay. And it really sat in with me. And I was like, okay, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. That was another book. My God, it took me so long to read that book. I kept it, read a few pages, got a certain amount in, and decided, wow, I just don't get this anymore, or it's too heavy, or it was taking me too long to read, or it was too slow, or for whatever reason, it just wasn't the right time. But I remembered the Celestial Prophecy being a book that I had tried so many times to read. Eventually one day picked it up after several attempts and read the whole thing. And I knew when I couldn't read The Power of Now, when I could read a certain amount of it and then would get kind of stuck or slow or kind of give up or stop reading it, rather than beating myself over the head and being like, what is wrong with me? That's like such a waste of buying a book and whatever. And I absolutely love books. I have a total addiction for books. So it didn't bother me to have another book there. And there's about thousands of books probably that I haven't read at this stage. But what I'm saying to you is, because I'd had that experience with the Celestial Prophecy, when I read The Power of Now and it wasn't clicking in with me, I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's just not the right time for me. And a couple of attempts later, a couple of years later, I picked it up and then read it from front to back and devoured the book. And I was like, wow, isn't it interesting how we go through our lives, we meet a subject that we feel we would like to know more about, but slightly repelled against, or it doesn't work for us, or it doesn't happen for us. And so we give up, we throw the toys out of the pram, we give up, and we just go, oh well, that it wasn't for me. And sometimes you might know it wasn't for you, but there are on other occasions where it just wasn't the right time for you. And for me, my spiritual path has been very like that. I've come across so many various aspects, from angels and numerology, astrology, tarot, reading and following different spiritual teachers, reading lots of different types of books, going down the psychology route, the mind route, going down the spiritual route, working with the body. I've done all these different modalities, and what I've discovered is they all fit nicely in with each other, and it just takes time for it to be the right time to discover something. And we can push and push and push and push and push, and I am incredibly guilty for that because I'm so impatient and I just want the next step all the time. And my constant lesson in life is to just bed in and be in this moment as much as we can humanly possible. So part of the reason why I'm saying that is, on the particular journey that we're all meeting at, it's kind of like having the affinity sign. And for years we've been kind of skirting around the outsides and kind of crossing over at different parts. Now we're all just meeting in the middle. We've had this crossover and we're about to meet in the middle. And this crossover is going to be a change and a split off from the 3-dimensional world into the 5-dimensional world. And essentially what that means is, as we stand on planet Earth, everything is very heavy and dense in terms of energy. The lower you go to the earth, the more densely energetic things become. The higher we, move in our energy fields, the lighter things become. And so you can actually feel that or you can see it, from Earth up as far as, the clouds, the atmosphere, out into space, out into the universe. And the energy changes and becomes lighter. And so really what I'm saying to you is, in terms of this shift that's happening at the moment, we have the 3-dimensional Earth, and then we're looking to move to the 5-dimensional Earth. In fact, we're already moving there. And there'll be a lot of people experiencing things like headaches and body aches and pains and energetic shifts. All these different things are happening for people where they're actually ascending and changing to the 5th dimension as we speak. And so what I actually feel is happening is, I feel as though the narrative that's going on in the 3D world, be it, the pandemic, all this, stuff about the cabal, the deep state, all the conspiracy theories. I hate calling them conspiracy theories because they're not conspiracy. They were just made to look like conspiracy. Whole other video. But all this narrative, this deep, dark, heavy narrative that's going on, is playing out in the 3D world, and we've created it. Our collective consciousness got to a stage where we were sick and tired working all the time, and we wanted to have more time with our families, and we didn't want to be in the jobs that we were in, and we wanted more time off work, or we wanted to be able to work from home. It's not a coincidence that we're experiencing this at the moment. We've created this. And so this experience that we're having, regardless of the negative aspects of it, we have to see it for what it is. We've been given time to pause. We've actually been given time to work on ourselves. And so what are you choosing to work on? What are you choosing to work on? And that's what you need to question in yourself. So I do feel part of our journey here at the moment in terms of awakening is to become aware of this narrative that was going on in the 3D that we didn't know about, and unattach from fear and let it go. And I do feel that that's where the 3D world is. And over this, you have like an acetate layer, like a clear plastic film that's sitting just above the 3D. And that clear plastic film, if you want to call it that, is the 5-dimensional world, or the 5th dimension. And if you can imagine those who've been working on their spiritual path, those who've been working on their life development, their life path, their life purpose, those who've been raising their vibrations, all these people, you and me, and there are some people who are just very, very new to this, and I want you to know that the bus hasn't left and you can still buy a ticket. It's time. The shift and change and the separation is about to happen, but there's still time, and you still have time, and your family, friends and loved ones still have time to make this shift. And so how I feel, or what I feel is happening, is those who have been working on this path of enlightenment have actually already shifted over to the 5th dimension. So they're actually already, for argument's sake, on this clear acetate film. This clear acetate film is overlaid over the 3D or 3rd dimensional world. And so, the shift that us in the 5th dimension are feeling, the energetic pull and the energy shifts, the body aches and pains, the whole lot of it. This is all part of the separation from the 5D to the 3D, because we are living in both at the moment. So we're moving between heavy and dense energy to lighter energies, heavy and dense energy to lighter energies. We're moving from the narrative of what's happening on planet Earth with the pandemic and the cabal, the deep state and the conspiracy theories. We're moving from that into, there's a whole new world to be had. There's a whole new world to be experienced, and we can, this world is filled with light and love and transparency and wisdom and communication and all the beautiful things that we've wanted for so long. But the reason it looks like we're still in this 3D world is because we're on that clear, transparent acetate. So we are in the 5th dimension. We're just walking around in what looks to be the 3rd dimensional world. So we're still looking at the old narrative because we can see it, because we're on this see-through transparent film looking at it. But in actual fact, once you move and separate the two, we're going to see very clearly that the 3-dimensional world still will have that narrative going on, but we won't need to worry about it, because we're going to be in our own version of that same earth. So the shift and the move that we're having, it's painful, because if you wanted to take the skin off an orange and you peel it, you can hear the crackle and the breaking and the separation of fibers, and you can almost see the peel and the pulling on the piece of orange underneath as you separate that. And that separation, which has been grown, both of them have grown together. The skin and the orange has grown together, and that separation, when you pull the skin away from the orange to reveal the juicy parts, that's not always an easy process. And for us, there's pain and separation involved with that as well. We're used to living in a 3-dimensional world. We don't know how to operate in a 5th dimensional world, because it's so sublime and heaven-like that we can't even imagine how it could feel. And we work from our mind and our brains, and what we perceive to be like the egoic mind and the mind itself. We work from these levels and try to create with our own mind what we feel is a real reality, but we don't know till we get there. How can we know what this looks like on its own when we're still stuck in the 3D world? And when we're still stuck in the 3D world, that's the time that we need to do as much work on ourselves as we can. And part of that work is simply realizing what's going on, and realizing that there's a peeling and separation of these two worlds, and that the pain of transition and the discomfort and being taken out of our comfort zones and being asked to choose to live a life differently, it's really uncomfortable, it's really uncertain, and it's asking us to tap into ourselves and feel into what feels right. So if you've been living in the 3D world and you're very, very new to this, and you've been living a life of go, stress all the time, and this lockdown has stopped you in your tracks, and it's given you a little bit of space to breathe and think, then this is your time to really feel into, do you want to go back to your old world? Because you can make that choice. If the idea of familiarity is what comforts you, you have to understand that if you're choosing to go back into, because you can make the choice between going to the new world and staying in the old world. You can do that. But what you have to understand is what happens when you make that choice. If you're choosing to stay in the three-dimensional world and third-dimensional world where we've all been living forever, you know, and you feel unnerved by change, and you feel unsettled by the not knowing of what's coming, and you feel unsure and scared and frightened, and because of that fear you decide to stay with what you know best, and what you know best is to go back into the same world that you just came out of, but you know you've had a break now, so it's going to be better. Of course, that's not necessarily how it's going to be, because that narrative that's playing out in that 3D world, it's going to play out and it's going to do its own thing, and you have to decide whether you want to be part of that, because life will never be the same in that particular 3D narrative. It will never be the same. There's a lot more control, and you're giving up your sovereignty. You're going back into the cage, so to speak. So you need to decide whether going back into the cage because you think it feels familiar, and it's not necessarily going to be familiar because there will be a lot of change happens there anyway, or you can choose right here, right now, if you haven't made the choice already, you can choose to shift into the fifth dimension, into this new world. What the hell does that mean? That basically means that you're going to raise your vibrations. You need to raise your vibrations to a lighter resonance in order to be able to live in this particular world. And the best ways of doing that are to feel love and gratitude. At the moment, we're being separated from our families, our loved ones, our friends, and you know, the dating scene, the whole lot. We're being separated physically from each other, and we all have these energetic fields, and we need to be around each other. It's part of our, you know, humanness. And have you ever noticed when you watch a kid running around and playing and kind of giggling, and that kind of giddy giggling that you have, your heart feels so light, you know, or you see a dog and it's doing something really cute and whatever, and you know, your heart just feels full of love, and it just feels really, really light. There's a love that comes from innocence, and innocence is the most basic of beauties that we have as humans. And so the best way of feeling love is to have gratitude for the most simplest of things. To have time to watch this video. Oh my God, you know, back in the day when we're all stressed out, you wouldn't have time to watch all these videos that we've been watching on YouTube or any other channel or whatever, but you know, we wouldn't have had the time to do this, and now we're getting that time. We're getting the time to work on ourselves. We're getting the time to share our love and our compassion with our families. We're getting the time to give to others where we wouldn't have maybe had the means or been able to give to others before. There's so many different ways that we can feel love. Simply being with our loved ones, feeling gratitude, sitting and meditating into lighter and brighter colours to come up through your chakras, from your root chakra all the way to your crown chakra, and feel the energy lifting and becoming light as we're meditating. There's tons of ways. And essentially, as I said earlier on, those who are new on this path, you have not missed the bus. The bus is still there. We are calling for last tickets. There's still time to go collect your ticket, and it's not going to leave without you if you've made the choice that you want to go. And that's essentially the bottom line of it. So each person in this planet is living from their own unique perspective. Each person in their own world, everything is happening as it should and in time for them in that moment. The only thing that you need to do is be aware. Be aware of the clues that are offering you invitations to leave the old world behind and to move to the new world. be aware of the moments that the universe is handing you choice. As humans, we have free will and we have choice, and it's our birthright to exercise that choice. And so right now, you're being offered the opportunity of staying in the old narrative, in the 3D world where things are still going to change. You think it's comfortable, it's still going to change, and you're going to stay there. Or alternatively, now is the time to make a decision as to whether you'd like the possibility of having freedom, of feeling light, of transparency, of feeling more love and joy in your life, of feeling liberated, untrapped, that you can manifest the things that you want to manifest. You have the choice of going towards that world. And it sounds airy-fairy. Absolutely, I completely agree. It sounds airy-fairy and it sounds impossible. But the one thing I've also realised is you can make a choice to stay in the old world because that's what you know and because you believe that this side is a little bit too airy-fairy for you. But what would happen if you decided to just give this side a choice or a chance? You know, if you feel that it's all airy-fairy, it doesn't really resonate with you and you really don't want to look at that aspect of things or the possibilities of that, then absolutely, this is not part of your journey and maybe you're not coming with us to the new world. It genuinely could be as simple as that. And that's not a bad thing. It just means that your contract when you came into this world was to make that choice. There's no right or wrong choice in this. Everybody's on their own particular journey. We have to remember that. This is another part of the ascension. It's also another part of how we who are on spiritual path can cut the cords to the third dimensional world and raise ourselves up again, a little bit like a helium balloon with a string attached. You know, we want to be free of all the cords. We want to be free of everything that holds and weights us down. And you want to cut that cord so the balloon can fly and lift up. And one of those cords is the imposition that we place on others. And what I mean by that is we really have to understand that we ourselves have had our own individual spiritual journey to this point. No two people have had the same spiritual journey. No two people will have had the same aha moments at the same time, in the same places, in the same ways, from the same circumstances. Some people would have had certain aha moments at an early age, other people have them at a later age. The journey of our spiritual path is so individual. Our life path is so individual. And as much as we want to see everybody coming with us to this new world, we also have to be aware and we also have to have love and compassion and understanding that it may not be their time. You have to realize that your journey is your journey. And while you feel that you may be here in order to save the world, help people awaken, help them ascend, while you may feel that that's part of your journey and your mission, absolutely, you can spread your word, you can do what I'm doing, you can share your points of view. What you have to understand is somebody else's point of view is equally valid in their life at that time, in their world, as yours is to you. And as I said, we all come into this world to live out our own karmic histories, to live our, like if you look at astrology, you've got a north node. The north node is what points you in the direction of your life path and your life mission. Your south node is the aspects that you need to embrace in order to be able to clear your north node. And really it's just a direction. There is no right or wrong. There is no right or wrong for anybody. Really isn't. Yes, there is light and dark, but darkness and light are born from the same place. They're working towards the same thing. The darkness that we perceive, even all the darkness and the crazy stuff that's happening in the 3D narrative at the moment, it's all there to serve a purpose. It's there to serve a purpose to wake you up or get you stuck in it. So if you choose to sleep in the 3D narrative that's going to continue on, continue to get stuck into these narratives, and if you're going to continue to be fearful about this global pandemic that's going on, if you're going to continue to watch all the videos that you've watched to discover all the crazy darkness that's going on in the background, because I've done that. I've been down the rabbit hole for weeks and weeks, and what I've come to understand on my journey is, now that I've been down the rabbit hole and I've seen that all the burrows seem to all lead back to the same place, I'm saturated, and so I no longer feel like I need to figure that part out, because there's nothing to figure out. With all the stuff that's going on, the deep state and all these kind of conspiracies and whatever, there's actually nothing to figure out. All there is to understand what's going on and to release it and let it go. And the understanding of that and the releasing and letting it go is like cutting that cord to the balloon. The balloon goes up and you feel so much lighter. Giving up the need to convince others of what's going on is an absolute waste of your energy. It's just going to pull you down. It's just going to make you feel hopeless and defeated. You don't need to do that. Maintain your course and spread your love and energy, but try not to get distracted with the narrative, and try not to get distracted by trying to convince other people of the narrative. There is no point in trying to convince anybody, because they are on their own particular journey, and they're either going to make it to the bus that's leaving for the 5D world, so to speak, or they're not. And that's right, that's perfect, and it's right for them at their journey. In past lifetimes they may have come back and already done this, and they don't need to do that. They might need to clear old karma. We don't know, and it's none of our business to try and figure that out. What we need to do is only be concerned with what we can do in our space, and we have to allow others to have their journey. We need to respect others where they're on their journey, and we need to hold out a hand and let them know. That's the only thing you can do, is hold out your hand and let them know and say, here's who I am, here's what I know, here's what I feel to be true in this moment. This is coming from my world, and I don't expect it to be the same in your world, but I'm just letting you know that this is who I am. And if you ever need any information, and if you ever need to step into this side of things a little bit more and I can help you, I'd love to hear from you, or I'd love to help you, whatever. The worst thing we can do is ram theories, concepts and ideas down people's throat. If people are not at a point in their journey where they're able to accept that information, they're just going to repel the information. And what's going to happen is you're going to waste valuable energy and time trying to convince somebody of somebody of something which it wasn't part of their journey at this very moment. And so, going back to the Celestine Prophecy and the Power of Now, there was a time in my life where it just wasn't the right time to read it. What was interesting was I knew that they were books that I probably will read at some point in time, but they just weren't for that moment. And if anybody had tried to sell me those concepts earlier on, I would have been like, oh, I don't know, look, yeah, it's a lovely concept, but I don't really get it, because I'm still living in fear. And so these people who you're trying to convince of stuff they're living in fear, and they need to find their own way out of it. We all need to find our own way out into the light as such. So with the shift from the 3D world to the 5D world, as I said, the one is layered still over the other, which is why we can see this 3D narrative going on. The fifth dimensional acetate, we're all walking around in this world and we can hear what's going on, we can see what's going on. It looks as if it's like an imminent threat to us, when in actual fact it's not, because we're here. We just look like we're here, but we're actually here. So the narratives, I would say to anybody who's living on their spiritual journey and raising their vibrations, really what we don't want to do is we don't necessarily want to pray and meditate and hope for and manifest change in this world, because we're not in this world anymore. We're actually in this world. What we want to do is open up that space for people who are still in this world. So rather than have us try to change this, which is never going to change anyway because we're moving to 5D, rather than us trying to change this, because that's just going to live on its own karmic history anyway, what we want to do is resonate at high frequencies to allow people who are still choosing this narrative to offer them our vibrations and our love and our the space that we're holding for them. Just let them know you're holding the door on the bus. That's all you're doing. You're just going to allow them their own time and make their own choice. Do you want to stay here? Do you want to come here? So 3D, 5D. Do you want to stay here or do you want to come here? And it's that portal between the 5D and the 3D that allows space for these people who are just waking up and who are probably frightened to death and don't know what's going on. You don't want to force information down the throat of somebody who's just woken up. You want to hold space for them. Be patient with them. See that they're okay. See that they're getting the information that they want if they're asking for it. But we can't force them because they're, I have two brothers who I love dearly and who don't seem to be on this path at all and are complete, logic thinkers, and, they may not make it to the 5D from the 3D, and I can't change that because it's not my business to. It is, I have no right interfering with their karmic contracts. And as much as I would like to see them come into this world, because I know myself and my mum are here, I can't change that. And all we can do is, allow them to see where we're at, keep the door open, and hope that when the time comes for that big shift, that total separation, the orange peel from the skin to come away, that they'll be on board with it. And so it's to have love and compassion for everybody for where they are on in their journey. So sorry, it was a bit of a long video, but that's essentially where I'm at, and I just wanted to share that with you. I wanted to share that concept with you because I think at the moment it's going to help people to really understand this duality that we're living in. It's really confusing. It's really confusing because on one side, you've got the spiritual, and then on the other side you've got this what looks like imminent doom, and you're kind of wondering, well, if I'm really spiritual, then how come the imminent doom is still happening? It's happening because it's part of the old narrative and it has to play out on planet Earth, and it's just because you can see it, but you're walking around in a transparent layer on a three-dimensional world where the narrative is happening. So it's almost as though when you sometimes see these movies, even I think it's like Scrooge or Christmas Carol, where the ghost of Christmas past or future or whatever brings him to this scene where he can, see everything playing out and going on. It's a little bit like that. So yes, you're still physical and you're still here, but it's a case that we're watching the old stuff play out, and it's all about having faith. If this sounds like absolute fairy fluff to you, that's totally fine. It's completely totally fine. But I would say to you, if it feels any way right for you to be curious about these concepts, it's not going to cause you any harm at all to delve into and do a bit of research on that side of things. Fear is the only thing that stops us from research, because if we're so bound to fear, we don't want to know what the alternative is, because we can't imagine how that would feel. It would be a threat to us, and because it would make us feel unstable. It's like opening the door with no room behind it. What are you going to step into? So fear is the only thing that's going to stop you from opening your mind and just seeing how all of this feels for you. I remember at a time, I've always been on this path, but I do remember going through a phase where I think it was kind of in my younger years. I was definitely awake, and somewhere around my teens everything kind of closed down, and it took me into my kind of adult years to reawaken to everything. And I just remember I remember how asleep I was. A lot of what I'm saying now, if I was saying that to me back then, I was a bit like, oh God, like that's just crazy talk. You didn't, and at the same time, the idea of looking into it felt really unsafe to me because I was afraid I'd believe it. And I was afraid I'd believe it because in some way, shape or form, I knew it resonated with me. And if it resonated with me, that was going to change my whole entire world. And that's scary. So what I'm saying to those who are watching this, if you've managed to stay with me, because it is a long video, I know I'm about to finish, is if you feel fearful of these words that I'm saying, then fear is what's holding you back. If any of this may possibly resonate with you, just let it sit with you. You don't need to commit yourself to these new ideas. Just let it sit with you. Let the possibilities sit with you. And essentially, everybody's entitled to be in their own world, on their own journey. And that's all I have to say for you today. So I hope this has been helpful. Thank you so much for sticking with it. As I said, it was a bit of a long video. And I hope you're all well. So take care of yourself and lots of love.